Did I really?
Yes.
Well, I have 912 listed on here and, I have two different agendas. One's the mayor's agenda and one's the agenda everybody else has. And the agenda everybody else has, it says 914 and on mine it says 912. So can we bring those two together? 914, 290, 216 is what is on everybody else's agenda. It is not the one on mine. So I will correct that. Thank you for bringing it up, Mr. Beeler. So item one, so the amount for those two wire transfers or for item one is $914,292.16. That is corrected. All right. Any item on the consent agenda that any council member wishes to pull for discussion? Hearing none. What is the desire of council on this item?
Move to approve.
I'll second.
All right, motion by Counselor Beeler, second by Counselor Vasquez to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there debate on this item? Hearing none, I'll go down the line for the vote. Mr. Beeler,
Yes.
Ms. Vasquez,
Yes.
Ms. Ripley,
Yes.
Ms. Frausto, Mr. Galvin,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. Motion passes with 6. All right, active agenda. First item is our 2025 preliminary budget public hearing. And please excuse us in the absence of our city clerk. I don't necessarily have the paperwork, but I do have it electronically, so I had to wake up my phone. All right, public hearing, November 12, 2024, the 2025 preliminary budget. This public hearing is being held to receive public comment and recommendations concerning the 2025 preliminary budget. The concern is that this hearing be fair in form and substance as well as appearance. Council members, do any of you have a conflict of interest concerning this issue? Do any of you stand to gain or lose any financial benefit as a result of the outcome of this hearing? If your answer is yes, please speak now. Council members, can you hear and consider this in a fair and objective manner? If your answer is no, please speak now. Audience members, is there anyone in the audience who objects to my participation or any other council member's participation in these proceedings? If there are objections, please approach the microphone, state your name and city of residence, and state your objection. The time is now 6:21. And the public hearing is now open. City manager will now provide the staff report on this item.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. It is my pleasure to transmit to you the preliminary 2025 general fund budget proposal.
First, we're going to do the public hearing.
Oh, okay.
And then we can present that.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Go for it.
All right. So tonight's public hearing is one of the requirements from the RCW in regards to council being able to review the budget document as well as your constituents. I am apologetic in letting you know that the budget is not on the city's website, so it has not been able to be reviewed by the public. But what we do present tonight will be put onto the website, so folks will be able to take a look at it. And when we have our subsequent budget meetings, we can allow for public comment if council so chooses on that. We do have a balanced budget. We're providing 2 options for council to review. And the state law does require that a budget message be provided with the preliminary budget, and the city manager will be reviewing the budget message with you. And RCW 34A 33055 states that in every code city, a budget message must be prepared by and under the direction of the city's chief administrative officer. It shall be submitted as part of the preliminary budget to the city's legislative body as part of at least 60 days before the beginning of the city's next fiscal year, and shall contain the following: an explanation of the budget document, an explanation or an outline of the recommended financial policies and programs of the city for the ensuing fiscal year, a statement of the relation of the recommended appropriation to such policies and programs, a statement of the reason for salient changes from the previous year in appropriation and revenue items, an explanation for any recommended major changes in financial policy, And one of the things we have talked a number of times on the important need for financial policies, which is something that we're going to be working on through the rest of this year and all of next year. So prior to the final hearing on the budget, the legislative body or committee thereof shall schedule hearings on the budget or parts thereof and may require the presence of department heads to give information regarding estimates and programs. So that is right out of the RCW. The 2025 preliminary budget sets forth the complete financial program showing expenditures proposed for each department and the sources of revenues by which those expenditures will be financed. And tonight we are presenting just the general fund budget. This is what we've had time to get our fingers wrapped around. And it's going to look a little bit different to you. We had talked previously about the budget document. This year's probably just going to be Excel spreadsheets. It's not going to be in a book. It's not going to have pictures and it's not going to be fancy. But and I believe you were emailed a copy. It shows you where we're at with 2024, what was budgeted and approved by council and what the anticipated expenses are going to be for 2024. And then it also provides information on if we were to have no changes, no increase in utility rates, what the ending fund balance would look like. And then we have two options, which do provide for it provides for some service cuts and increased revenues. And option one is $16,498,509, and option two is $16,530.33. And then I will take any questions if you have any, but other than that, we'll move on with the city manager presenting the preliminary budget with his budget message.
Okay, well, according to the formulary we have here, and I didn't have anybody in the audience sign up for the public comment, but is there anybody in the audience who wishes to approach the microphone and make comment on the preliminary budget at this point? You haven't been able to, I understand, and I apologize for that. We will, I believe, make it possible for you to comment publicly on the budget at a later meeting once you've had the opportunity to peruse that. So, okay, council members, any questions or comments? All right, not yet. Go ahead, Ms. Sable.
Well, that would conclude for the public hearing, and then the city manager can present the preliminary budget.
Okay, okay, did you want to present during the public hearing, Mr. City Manager, or?
And I'm assuming that we can close the public hearing card.
Well, that's exactly why I'm asking.
Oh, yeah, I know, and I was going right along with you.
Okay, so there being no other items for the public hearing, the public hearing is closed at 6:26. All right. So the next item that I have on the agenda is the water use efficiency public hearing.
Well, and I think what we can do is present the budget message, if nothing else.
Okay, very good. Council, is there any objection to that?
No objection.
Okay. It seems as if council is in agreement, Mr. City Manager, so please go ahead and present the budget message.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. So once again, it's my pleasure to transmit to you the preliminary 2025 general fund budget proposal. 3 preliminary general fund budget options are being presented for council's review. Option 1 that will be presented will be if we don't change anything and continue on our current course. Option 2 totals $16,498,509. Then option 3 totals $16,530,033. These numbers are expected to change based on discussion with the city council and subsequent refinement. Without revisiting the city's current financial issues in detail, as has recently been reported to the city council, out of necessity, this budget proposal is austere with no increases in staffing or expenditures except as contractually required, or to fund services beyond the city's ability to control, e.g. power, natural gas, etc. Following the influx of COVID-related federal revenues and expenditures and the spending down of a significant portion of our reserves in the general water and sewer funds, this budget reflects a reconstruction mode where the city will stabilize its spending and bring into alignment with revenues. Further, the preliminary budget options are intended as a placeholder budget at this point to allow for sufficient appropriations into 2025 to provide for a smooth operational transition into the new fiscal year and meet statutory deadlines. Given the newness of key staff, myself, I've been here 3 months now. This will be just starting my 4th month. Our deputy city manager, who's been here 2 months, as well as the extended absence of key finance department employees and the condition of the city's finances, including the lack of reliable information that we had to prepare this budget. It was not possible to provide a comprehensive budget proposal at this point. That said, and as noted above, it is anticipated that during the first quarter of 2025, with greater detail known and the city's finances better sorted, the council can anticipate a comprehensive budget amendment. Staff will be reviewing with council the 3 options for the general fund budget that is included in the materials for the hearing. General fund, the proposed 2025 budget in general represents a reduction of $7 million or 40% from the 2024 budget. As has been previously reported to the city council, the city's general fund reserves have been shrinking over the past few years as a result of ongoing expenditures significantly outpacing revenues. In August, upon learning of this issue, I instituted spending controls in an effort to minimize the spend down of any remaining general fund reserves to the extent possible. These controls do remain in place today. As a result of the proposed general fund budget, which funds public safety, parks, administrative functions, the subsidy of street funds, et cetera, again, is austere. To the extent possible, the proposed budget returns the city to pre-COVID spending levels as adjusted for increases in salary, benefits, materials, supplies, and equipment. The spending controls put in place by myself have resulted in a projected ending fund balance this year of $850,000. So much better news than anticipated, but I'd like to thank staff, in particular Debbie Zabel, for putting these controls in place because it's been quite an effort. So I really appreciate her being here. As mentioned earlier, staff will be presenting comprehensive budget amendments during the first quarter of 2025. With that proposal, staff will have a much clearer picture of the city's financial position and its sustainability. From a revenue standpoint, the general fund enhancement recommended at this time is the 1% property tax levy increase, on which the council has already acted, and rate increase for water, sewer, and garbage, which will positively impact general fund revenues as utilities are subject to a city utility tax. So we're going to break it out in the different buckets, first being utilities. The preliminary budget proposes a minimum of a 5% retail rate increase associated with the water, sewer, and garbage utilities. Fund reserves in each of these utilities are very low right now, and the need for capital expenditures in each of these systems are high because of aging infrastructure. We're going to hire FCS Group that will assist us with a financial health assessment for each fund, and staff will have a more refined proposal at the next city council meeting when the utility budgets are presented. In the water bucket, so as the city council was recently briefed, on the supply side, the city has 3 failed wells requiring rehabilitation, as well as the need for additional fire storage given the existing demands on the system. In the case of the wells, a failure to address these failures in a timely manner could result in the city not having sufficient water to meet demands during high flow months in 2025. Fund reserves within the water fund were spent down to fund a water line replacement that was apparently used as a match contribution for a transportation grant. It is anticipated that it will be necessary to issue a revenue bond to fund the well rehabilitation projects, which are extremely imperative. The reservoir, while needed, is such that the city has time to look for additional funding opportunities. A rate increase in this fund will need to account for increased operational costs, labor, supplies, equipment, electricity, fuel, as well as debt service for new debt for the well rehabilitation. In our sewer, as similar to water, it's experiencing issues associated with aging infrastructure in the collections and treatment systems. While the fund balance is approaching $1 million, this is due to unexpected bond proceeds. The rate of expenditures versus revenue is not sustainable, As noted previously, the preliminary budget proposes a 5% increase in retail rates to account for increases in labor, supplies, equipment, electricity, and fuel. Debt service due to needed capital improvements is unknown at this time, as unlike water, the comprehensive sewer system plan is not updated. That being said, there are significant known system needs. In our solid waste department, similarly, staff is proposing a 5% increase in solid waste rates to account for increased costs, again, in labor, supplies, equipment, electricity, fuel, as we all know, is going up. Our street fund. The street fund has a fund balance of over $1 million, which is surprising. I haven't read this much since my news day, so forgive me. So the street fund has a fund balance of $1 million, which is surprising considering the general fund historically subsidized this fund. The preliminary budget assumes spending down this amount in 2024 and eliminate the 2024 general fund transfer to the street fund, and proposes to spend down these reserves further in 2025 to lessen the general fund subsidy. So our ambulance fund, similar to the other city-owned utilities, a rate analysis is in process right now. This is particularly important as beneficial to the utility ratepayer that the ground emergency medical transportation reimbursement rate remains current and reflects the actual cost of service and the need to stay current. As a reminder to the council, ground emergency medical transportation, also commonly called GEMT, is a program where publicly owned or operated ambulance services can receive reimbursement payments from the federal government to help cover the gap between what it actually costs to transport patients in emergencies and what they receive from Medicaid in terms of reimbursement for such services. So I know that was quite a bit, council, quite a bit for my throat. So in summation, make no mistake, out of necessity and for financial survival of the city, I'm proposing a bare bones budget proposal with options for the council to consider with respect to reductions. While we have been able to accomplish a lot in a short period of time, the systematic issues associated with the city's budget, it's really occurred over time. It's going to take time and sacrifice to correct the situation. So again, want to thank staff. I want to thank Debbie Zabel and also the public for their input and concern. I know they've been vocal, but we're certainly doing everything we can to balance the budget. And, I'm proud that we put some measures in place and staff's been, adhering to those and being disciplined. And, the situation is becoming better by the day. So, but we've worked really hard to do that.
All right, thank you.
Also has this. They were emailed this.
Yes, that's in your inboxes.
Saw that.
And did you want to go through this?
It's not on the agenda for tonight. And so it's not listed. So I think.
They were just sent to us at 5:01. We'd
Yeah.
like time to read it before we start going.
Is exactly where I was going to go, Mr. Bueller, with that. I think it would be a good idea for council members to take some time to study and work their way through it. And then we could talk a little bit about it maybe next week again at the study session. And then discuss it maybe in greater detail during the next regular council meeting. I know that's kind of putting a little bit of pressure on us to get that all approved in time. But it's going to be tough if we haven't got a good, clear understanding of it. I don't know, council members, any other comments on this item? Ms.
Okay.
Barstow?
When will this be put on the agenda again for us to go over? Will we workshop it?
We will workshop it, and then after that, it'll be on the regular agenda.
Oh, okay. And then during the workshop, is it going to be open to public comment or public hearing since?
When do you have the next public hearing scheduled? That's for the next regular meeting?
The final.
The final budget approval meeting.
Okay.
So.
When is that? Do we
That-
have a date on it
Oh,
or just depending how everything?
we're hoping in early December, I think.
On early-
Yeah, we had it.
But it will be on the website for the public to peruse as well, and the public is invited to ask the city manager or our council members questions. You could talk to us personally or send us an email, or same with staff. So.
And Mayor, if I may, if any person from the general public wants, we can get the document to you in the morning. I'm usually in by 7:45, 8, so I can have those for you, and then we'll get it. on the website as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and our goal is to keep this whole process as open, clear, transparent as we possibly can. We're not trying to keep secrets here, so like I said, we just got the documents ourselves this evening, and so we ourselves haven't had a chance to study them either, so. All right, next item. Again, public hearing, water use efficiency, public hearing presentation. And this is a public hearing, so this public hearing is being held to receive public comments and recommendations concerning submitting the 2024 water system plan. The concern is that this hearing be fair in form and substance as well as appearance. Council members, do any of you have a conflict of interest concerning this issue? Do any of you stand to gain or lose any financial benefit as a result of the outcome of this hearing? If your answer is yes, please speak now. Council members, can you hear and consider this in a fair and objective manner? If your answer is no, please speak now. Audience members, is there anyone in the audience who objects to my participation or any other council members' participation in these proceedings? If there are objections, please approach the microphone, state your name and city of residence, and state your objection. The time.
Hi again, my name is Tom Dolan. And I wanted to take this opportunity, it says receive public comment, and that's all the further I read, so I wanted to ask whether I get an answer tonight or not. Were all the,
So I'm going to interrupt you just a second, Mr. Dolan. The question before the audience right now is if you have any objection to myself or any other council member being a participant in this public hearing.
no objection requested
Okay, you will be asked for, you will be given an opportunity for public comment.
during this?
Yes, absolutely, I promise. All right, thank you, sir. Don't go all the way down the aisle though, Mr. Dolan. It's coming up here pretty quickly. All right, the time is now 6:40 PM. And this public hearing is now open. Okay, city manager will provide the staff report on this item. City manager,
I'm gonna punt to Raul and give my throat a little a rest here.
Mr. Sanchez.
Thank you, City Manager, Council. I will turn it over to Robert Scott with HLA, who's going to be going over this little presentation on the water use efficiency.
Mr. Scott.
Good evening, Council. I will try to be brief since this is a presentation we've already gone through multiple times. When Department of Health received the water system plan, they identified that when we did our last public hearing, we were supposed to provide opportunities for the public to comment on the plan and water use efficiency. Since we did not use the words water use efficiency in our public outreach, they said that it didn't count, so we have to do it again. And so this is the exact language we've used in multiple plans before, so we're not sure why this one got tagged, but I took the last presentation and just took the last couple slides out of it. So hopefully we can go through this, give the public an opportunity to comment and move along. So if you could go to the next slide. So the water use efficiency is required to set goals in a water system plan, which the city has submitted and should be approved by the end of the month. The city is required to set goals and have measures in place for how to reduce the amount of water that the city's water system uses. There's required elements and chosen elements that the city is using. It has to be established through a public process like this one. And if it may delay, use of water efficiently may delay future projects. If you're using less water, you come up on your capacity less quickly. And so the water use efficiency measures may allow you to delay some projects. Next slide. So the previous goals and measures that the city had was that you were trying to reduce your single family, multifamily, and commercial connections by 25 gallons per day by December 31st, 2020. That was established in the 2016 water system plan. Based on the data available, we're not entirely sure exactly how you fell in that limit. It looks like you reduced it by about 11 gallons per day through that period of time. So you did work towards that goal. Not meeting that 25 gallon per day goal doesn't have any impact on the water system. It's self-imposed. This is what you're trying to do. So you did make progress, which is good. And so now the city just continues to try to make progress. Next slide. So after working with Public Works and looking at your historical water use, we thought a good goal for you and city staff agreed would be to reduce your flow from 290 gallons per day per equivalent residential unit, which is essentially a single family home, from 290 to 280 by 2033, which is when your next water system plan would be necessary. We think this is a manageable goal for you. There's room for continued reduction. And then that goal would allow you to reduce your water use by approximately 47 million gallons per year annually when you get to 2033. So the measures are basically, or the goals are, what are you trying to get to? And the measures are, how are you going to do it? And so after reviewing your last water system plan, Department of Health said you had a lot of good measures that you were doing, but a lot of them were fairly similar in terms of education. And so it's good to educate your citizens about using less water, but they wanted to see some different actions. So after working with them and city staff, we determined some additional measures that Department of Health was very excited about. They thought they were pretty good for what your system is trying to do. Everybody, the city is free to add and change these along the way. If after a little while you decide you want to do something else, there's no problem with making that change. So this certainly isn't set in stone for the next 10 years. So what your measures are in your water system plan. Right now, the city does outreach at the 3rd grade level to help teach children about water use and how to use water efficiently. You have periodic water bill brochures and that go out with your bills. I believe it's twice per year. And so one of the things they recommended is that you show a rolling average of water use. Typically, if a citizen looks at their water bill, they might know if it went up or down, but they might not know, well, it says I use this many gallons. What does that mean? Well, if you have a rolling average, you can look and say, well, I'm using less than I did last July. Or each connection has an idea of how they themselves are doing, and it can help them target, oh, my water use was high last month. I bet it was because of XYZ. So that was something that was going to be implemented in your billing software. The water conservation tips and in newspaper biennially is something you've been doing that Department of Health like to see. One of the things is, and when we've discussed this in the past, I know there've been some comments about trying to get SVID, get people able to connect to their own home irrigation to SVID when it's available. I understand there are areas of the city where it's not available. And if you're talking about existing homes, actually making that connection does put a cost onto the homeowner. So that's not always economically something that some connections want to do, but to make it available to people to know it's possible and to utilize SVID as new connections are added to your system. And then water savings infrastructure, basically have city staff at booths at public events and at Public Works to have the ability to hand out low flow shower heads and other items like that a homeowner can install in their own system to save water. And so that's the quick overview of what the city has been planning to do and what is in the water system plan that is currently being reviewed by Department of Health. So if there are questions and further discussion, we can do that.
Thank you, sir. Any person in the audience wishing to be heard on this matter, please approach the microphone, state your name and address and city of residence, and offer your testimony.
Hi again, Tom Dolan still. And I was curious about whether or not the department heads and especially water and the superintendents on those departments have been given their ability to look at their budget numbers. They were taken away. I talked to quite a few, and they were taken away quite some time ago, away from, I don't know that the department heads all lost theirs, but a lot of the superintendents had no longer, they didn't have any idea what the money they were spending were. So anyway, that was a question I had. And also the water use, I was kind of shocked to hear the testimony of that young lady at the last meeting that she was paying 2 water bills, and she kept coming to the city about it, and that there was nothing done about that either. I have been involved in my short career as a construction, working with water lines and sewer lines, and we found a lot of times that sometimes people have dug down and connected up to other people's water and were using their water, and we brought it to the owners, and next thing you know, we had lawsuits. So that's something I know with cameras and with your meters, and it's so complex right now that it's kind of hard to understand all the ins and outs of it. But that's something that if we had enough staff to go out and take a look at that. Also the wells, I really wonder, has there been more than one company look at those wells? Because I think a second opinion would be might be enlightening. I was involved in some of the wells around this town and the one out at the airport especially. So I just wondered if we've been able to have the input from other people about what's going on with our systems. Because it's hard to imagine that nothing's been done. And the picture painted by HLA was kind of surprising to me that we're in such bad shape well-wise. Few things to think about. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And you brought up good points. Council members, any questions or comments on this item? Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, what's his name from HLA? I forgot.
Robert.
Robert.
I have a question. So the new goal is to reduce 290, 280 by 2033.
Mhm.
How often are we going to be reviewing those goals? Or are we gonna wait till 2033 and say, hey, we didn't meet it?
So as far as a formalized process, the water system plan is not required to be updated more often than 10 years. If the city is required to submit water use efficiency reports to Department of Health once per year. And so that, if nothing else, those numbers will be seen by staff and we'll be as involved as we're asked to be in that regard, but those numbers are submitted annually, so you'll be able to see what your progress is towards that goal.
Okay, now I have another question.
Go ahead, sir.
When you said for the city employees to be at the booths, right, for well, the water savings.
Mhm.
Did you say to give out information or to give out some of these equipment for the low water flow?
My understanding is some of that has already, in talking with Daniel Tiliano with your water system, is that is already something that's occurring from time to time, is giving out those devices or that they are available. I don't know if that's something that they're always at booths, but he's informed me that in the past, some of that has occurred.
So I've been to these booths before. The last one, I believe it was Cinco de Mayo, and I didn't see any equipment being given out. I saw more of information given out for water savings. So is there a budget that we have for this equipment to be given out to the public, or?
And my understanding from talking with Daniel is that it's equipment that you have had at Public Works in the past that they would just have to bring with them when they did this. But I admit, I don't know if that is something that has to happen this upcoming year because there wasn't budget in the past, or if it's something that's done out of their general budget to do that.
Go ahead.
I
Mr.
mean,
Yeah, so from,
I just hit the microphone, my bad.
yeah, from what I've understood in the last years, a lot of it has been pamphlets and public outreach through things like that. In the past, I can find out what they've done in the past, since he's been here. I know that cities kind of jump back and forth, like, Mr. Scott was saying here, as far as like water conservation, little attachments or pamphlets on how to conserve water.
Okay, yeah, if you could definitely get back to us to see if we are gonna be doing that, I guess, in the future.
No, I agree with you, sir. If that's something that we say we're going to do, we'd ought to be out there doing it. So further questions or comments from council members? Mr. Beedler.
What average PSI water pressure do we keep in the city lines?
That would vary depending on the area, but it's high. It's somewhere, there's areas where it could be 80 to 90 PSI, 70, 75.
Is there any way for us to regulate it? Get it
The
down to
house, the homes themselves, I think is, as far as the backflows and the water meter, I'd have to see how you could cut that back, but I mean, there's pressure regulators in some areas that require it. Also, fire flow requires a set amount of pressure. So there's different things that we can look at. If that's what you're asking, kind
I
of.
know on my ice maker on my fridge, it kept overflowing and overflowing, and I had to put a regulator on to keep
Yeah.
80 PSI from overflowing it,
Okay. In your,
my house.
is that on, where's your house at?
Schoon Road.
Okay. Yeah, I can see what the water pressure is over there.
It's around 80.
Oh, okay. What else we can do?
Just speaking from the side, from when we do our hydrant testing, we're consistently seeing pressures between 60 and 80 PSI across the board.
Right.
And 80.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know I might have on my house a pressure regulator too, otherwise it blows the faucets off. Go ahead, Ms. Vasquez.
I have a question, and maybe you might not know the answer to this, but how often are we doing community outreach with sharing information regarding saving water?
We try to use every public event that's going on. Like the
Okay.
last one that was done was at the Halloween event at the community center.
Okay,
Cinco de Mayo, Sunshine Days, things like that where, and then like, they were said, they go to the schools and do the third grade. So they do that. So we try to do anything that's going on with the community to try to get something out there.
okay, perfect. I just wanted to know more or less, have an idea. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Hearing none. There being no additional comments from the public or council, let the record. I'm sorry, I hadn't seen your hand up, ma'am. Go ahead.
Tony Soto from Sunnyside.
Please speak into the microphone if you could. That's
Tony Soto from Sunnyside. I live on Harrison Hill. And you people, the city, should be ashamed of yourself because in the summer you turn on those sprinklers at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and you are watering the street. That's waste, waste, waste. You should be ashamed of yourselves. I know the staff doesn't work in the middle of the night, but those sprinklers go on and it's watering the street, the pavement. That's ridiculous. You guys should look into that. Also, when I moved into my house, the sewer system was not connected to my house. I was going to my neighbor's house and I was paying for that. There was no service until I found out. How did I find out? My pipe started plugging up. The neighbor was putting in beer cans in the P-trap and coming to my house. So I had the plumber come in and he put the camera and it went all the way on the side of Joyce Carter's house, under her drive and out the sewer system. And I was not connected to the sewer. You people should look at that. Some of these houses up there are not connected to the sewer. And yet I paid for the sewer. So, hey, I paid umpteen money for that. And they said when Harrison was annexed to the city, that they would make sure that everybody was connected, but unfortunately, that landowner did not. He cheated and he used Joyce Carter sewer system to take his sewer out into the street, okay? So there are houses that are not connected, that are using somebody else's sewer system. So talk about upgrading. Here you go, a good one. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Soto. That reminds me of a few stories I heard about sewer systems up on the hill, and you're not alone in that problem. And yeah, I had forgotten about that, but you are correct that there was some of that going on. So, Ms. Ripley.
You know, I was in Walmart about 6-8 months ago, and their toilet was continuously running. And I went and told the management about it, and they said, "Oh, that's been running for a long time." Any way to regulate businesses that happens to? I mean, isn't that just, waste?
It is a waste on, yeah, but it would be hard for the city to go to every, I guess, to be going into private property and checking their, but I mean, part of the public outreach is that information that goes out lets them know what to look for. Like, for example, yes, you can have
Yeah,
toilet tanks that stick or they're just leaking and yes, it could be a little drip, but that adds up over 24
Yeah.
hours.
yeah. Okay.
That was a good point, Ms. Ripley. Thank you for that. Further questions or comments? All right, there being no additional comments from the public or the council, let the record show that the public hearing is now closed and that the time is 6:58 PM. All right, the next item on the agenda is a resolution to adopt the water system plan. Approve a resolution authorizing the city manager to adopt the water system plan. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Washington State Department of Health opened its annual construction loan application cycle on October 1st. And the application deadline is November 30th of this year for the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, also known typically as the DWRF program. As discussed at previous water system plan presentations at the August 26th and September 9th city council meetings, the approval and adoption of the city's water plan is necessary to be eligible to apply for the DWSRF program. The water system plan was submitted to DOH on September 12th of this year, and DOH has confirmed that they will be able to provide tentative approval prior to the DWSRF application deadline. DOH staff have committed to providing tentative water system plan approval prior to November 25th. However, they have also requested that all documentation that must be received by DOH that must be submitted by November 25th. For this reason, the safer project schedule would be to take action at today's meeting to pass a resolution adopting the plan pending DOH approval. This would allow the city to proceed with the application process if DOH approval comes between November 12th and November 25th, rather than rely on a turnaround after the November 25th meeting.
Thank you, sir. Any questions or comments from council? Mr. Deputy Mayor.
This is to approve the water system plan,
Correct.
not to approve.
We're on item C at this time.
Okay.
All right, hearing no questions from council, what is the desire of council on this item?
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, we got a motion by Deputy Mayor, second by Councilor Beeler to adopt the water system plan as presented. Is there debate on this item? Hearing none. Down the list, Mr. Beeler,
Yes.
Ms. Vasquez,
Yes.
Ms. Ripley,
Yes.
Ms. Frausto, Deputy Mayor.
Yes.
I too vote yes. Motion passes. All right, item D, resolution to submit a drinking water state revolving fund application. Consider approving a resolution authorizing the city manager to submit a drinking water state revolving fund application. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. The Washington State Department of Health opened its annual construction loan application cycle on October 1st, and the application deadline is November 30th of 2024 for the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund program. As discussed at previous water system plan presentations at the August 26th and September 9th city council meetings, the city's highest priority capital improvement projects for the water system are the rehabilitation of wells 6 and 7 to address iron, bacteria, fouling, and sanding, and the sources cannot currently be operated for long periods of time, thereby limiting overall water system capacity. One requirement of the DWSRF program is that the prospective project be identified within the city's adopted water system plan. Based on uncertainty regarding when DOH will provide tentative approval, there may not be sufficient time available to wait for approval prior to providing authorization to the city staff to submit the application. Therefore, approval to submit contingent upon receiving DOH approval is the recommended method of meeting application deadlines without jeopardizing the city's opportunity to apply. The water system plan update identifies a combined cost of $1,622,600 to complete design and construction of the well rehabilitation project. DWSRF charges a loan fee of 1% at loan execution, resulting in anticipated application of requests of approximately $1,638,800.
Thank you, sir. Council members, questions or comments for the city manager?
Would that loan cover both wells completely?
I'll let Raul chime in.
Correct. Yes, that's wells 6 and 7.
At 1%? I like that.
It's a good rate.
Further questions or comments? Hearing none. What is the desire of council on this item?
Move to approve.
Second.
Who was that second? Ms. Vasquez? Oh, Ms. Ripley.
Ripley.
All right, we got a motion by Deputy Mayor, second by Councilor Ripley to approve a resolution authorizing the city manager to submit a drinking water state revolving fund application. Debate on this item. Hearing none. Going down the list, Councilor Beeler,
Yes.
Counselor Vasquez,
Yes.
Counselor Ripley,
Yes.
Counselor Fausto,
Yes.
Counselor Deputy Mayor Galvan.
Yes.
And I too vote yes, motion passes. Item E, CARB program funding application submission. Consider approving a resolution and authorize the city manager to submit a funding application to the CARB funding program offered by the Washington State Department of Transportation Aviation Division. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In 2021-22, the Port of Sunnyside and the City of Sunnyside advocated for grant funding through Senator Honeyford's office to support economic diversity and growth at the Sunnyside Municipal Airport. A proviso was approved in the previous Washington State transportation budget and was directed to the Department of Commerce to administer, with the Port of Sunnyside being the grant recipient. The grant funding is specific to hangar development. Upon project completion, the hangar will be a city-owned facility available to rent for aeronautical use. The project, as designed, will construct 8 T hangars. The Port of Sunnyside recently bid the project, and the bids received are in excess of the available grant funding. The lowest responsive and responsible bid received was in the amount of $1,447,744.18. The available grant funding is $650,000. That left a funding gap of $797,744.18. These bids were determined to be too high and have been rejected by the Port of Sunnyside. The project is in the process of being rebid and will include alternative bid options. The grant funding received will expire on June of 2025 and consequently must be expended prior to June. There is an immediate regional need for aircraft hangars. Hangars at the Sunnyside Municipal Airport will lend to additional fixed base planes to increase the airport's base plane count. The FAA does require airports to maintain a minimum of fixed planes to receive funding through the Airport Improvement Program. The airport is currently at 12 base planes, with 2 of those not registered at the airport. The verified number of planes is 10, and the minimum number of aircraft to receive FAA funding is 9. The hangar development will allow the opportunity to increase base plane numbers while increasing revenues at the airport. And to wrap it up, the Washington State Department of Transportation Aviation Division offers a loan program. It's called CARB. The purpose of the program is to provide a funding source for airport development, as funding programs are limited. The program is loan only. The loan terms would be 20 years at a fixed rate of 2%. There is no penalty for paying the loan early, and any unused funding can be returned to WSDOT. The loan payment can be deferred up to 3 years from the date of project completion. A sample amortization schedule prepared by WSDOT is included in your packet for reference, and the first loan payment could be as late or early as 2029, and applications are due November 15th of 2024. So quite a mouthful there, Mayor, but that's the information we'll give you.
Assuming you've got the application filled out already, because it's just a couple of days away.
Yes.
Council members, questions or comments for the city manager? Mr. Beeler.
I think we talked about before, but what month after everything's built and everything's rented out, what kind of income will we get off those 8 hangars?
Councilman, it's not as much as you would think, but I'll let Raul tell you some of those details.
So just to kind of go over a little bit on that, right now we're going through a rate study, which on our rates to figure out what would be an appropriate number. But based on the last meeting, I think that came up on, and HLA did look into, for example, just some other airports kind of in comparison to ours. Walla Walla charges $150 to $279 per month for T hangars. Wenatchee charges $207 to $285 per month for T hangars. Just kind of an idea of what other hangars are going for. Again, as mentioned by HLA also on some of this, is we want to be competitive in that area too. So we also have to kind of look at what they're going for in order to attract the client to come here.
All right, other questions or comments? Mr. Deputy Mayor.
So I know why we're trying to build more hangars, right? To attract more planes. Right now, you said we have 10 planes and we need 9 for FAA, funding. But I was going through the airport layout plan that was mentioned last meeting, And I found I believe the draft was up there, but I found the one that was published this year in around May or April. And it has other safety issues, right? The airport has other safety issues, so I know, and I know the FAA, does not mandate new hangars. However, it prioritizes, compliance with safety standards such as these other safety issues that are listed on the plan. How do we determine that a hangar was better fit to do first than these other issues? One of the safety issues on that plan was a fence perimeter around the airport. I know we have a gate, but it's just at the entrance, right? Anybody can access the airport throughout the perimeter. I believe another one was extending the field or the landing strip. And I think another one was, I think the landing strip and where they taxi was they were too close to each other. So there had to be like some sort of separation. So I'm just trying to determine how we came up with, okay, we need a building for planes as opposed to these other safety issues that we have out there.
So this is a grant that the port received, and they received $650,000 for an 8 T hangar. They obviously came in way less than the minimum bid of a 1.4 million. They did approach the city based on the fact that once this T hangar would be built, they're going to turn it over to the city. Obviously, once it turned over to the city, then it's a way for the city to generate obviously that revenue off the lease. They don't want to lose the money. They have until June of 2025 in order to move forward with this. If obviously they can't come up with the money, which they also are looking into with Department of Commerce to see if they can get more funding. Due because of the deadline of the submittal for this being November 15th, this would be an application obviously to CARB on our end for the gap of whatever they may get more money, and if whatever we would be able to, of course, if council is in approval for this. When you're talking about the airport layout plan, that is what some of the safety measures that the airport needs that were laid out in the airport layout plan, which, like you said, the fencing perimeter, the runway extending it, which obviously would require acquisition of more land. These are all things that have been pointed out in the airport layout plan. Of course, that's also has to do with funding, where in order for us to apply for this funding through the FAA to move forward with some of these projects, is we have to have an approved airport layout plan. And since those items have been pointed out in the plan, then we can apply for grants through the FAA in order to continue, which goes back to, again, to what was talked about here with the minimum planes and things like that, that need to take place, that need to be out there in order for us to qualify for these grants.
And
Oh, no, go ahead.
no, and I understand that, but the port is handing us something that it's not gonna make money for the city. Ultimately, we're gonna be losing money renting out these hangars. I think in the previous presentation, I think it said like $300 or something, but now you're saying that other airports are between $150, $200. I think we need to be cautious. Why are we going to take on a project and we're going to be losing money and not even breaking even, right? And I understand that this money is earmarked for hangars. I don't know why we didn't go after other stuff, earmarked towards these other safety issues, but definitely, it's, and I know the understanding, I know the need for more hangars, but I think there's just, it's not top of priority, I guess, according to the plan.
Well, yeah, again, this wasn't part of the airport layout. This is a funding that the port
Mhm.
was able to obtain through a grant.
Mm.
And so this is something that they wanted to build, which came in way more than double what they expected to come in. And so, but again, we brought it to council and for you to, yeah, make a determination on which way you want to go with this. I understand it. Yes, it is a loan. It is money that we have to pay back. And that is something that we need to decide.
Mhm.
Okay, Mr. Elsha, you had a question?
Yeah, and maybe this is up for discussion. I'd like to know what everybody else thinks. The way that I see this is that we're being allocated or the port has obtained a grant and now we have access to a loan as well, or are we still talking about the grant? I'm just really confused about the monies portion. Because whatever amount of money that we're getting sounds great. My concern about if it's a grant or if it's a loan, sustainability after that. I'm not too sure why the port doesn't want to continue holding on to it. Maybe they see that the city can gain some money or financial grounds, I guess, with this holding on to this. But then it's the other question of how are we attracting these airport or airplane owners to want to lease those hangars? What is it for them, or how are we going to be attracting them to want to set up shop here? And then maybe that goes to economic development, which we all know that it's, not our biggest, it's not our forte right now, and we have work to do in that area here in Sunnyside. So it's just kind of, I'm trying to see the bigger picture here, but it's very difficult, and I would hate for us to come into some regression or really hit a wall with this and then get caught up with trying to sustain this. And then it's going to be costing us instead of actually putting money into our pockets. Just
So can I say something? So on the agenda item on page 5, there's actually a breakdown on how much the total projected cost is and how much the state grant is covering and how much the loan request is.
what page, Counselor?
On 5, underneath the CARB.
On 5?
And that's where maybe it'll clear up your confusion on the loan request amount.
And again, that is a good, if we were going for the full, because that's their max, they can do $750,000 on this loan. Because that's how we could come up with, obviously, the other part would be to apply to CARB. But depending on what that gap is, for example, if for some reason they came up with more money to cover part of this, then the loan would be less, which then it would change all this, because this is based on $742,000. So there's a breakdown of what the yearly payment would be. And then because they can defer the first payment up to 3 years, so the first payment wouldn't be until 2029, which would give the city time to start collecting some of the lease for 3 years before you made the first payment. But again, yes, it is a loan, and under our situation, it is something that we have to consider. But yes, as the port approached, they don't want to lose the money of the grant. This is what the best that we could do is under CARB. If we were, obviously, if council was in approval, this is how we can close that gap.
So it seems as if, I guess what everybody's trying to say, and as I understand it, if it's correct, that the port was able to find $650,000. And that money is specifically for building hangars. It is not enough to build the hangars. Therefore, there is a gap between what it's going to cost to build those hangars and what the port has available. The port is looking for ways to fill that gap, and one of their options is to get the city to find some funding in order to do that. Unfortunately, it's a loan, which means it puts the city on the hook for that because the port is not going to pay that loan back for us. And so we need to decide whether we want to commit to applying for that loan and see if we can get the funds in order to build those hangars or not. And unfortunately, it's a couple of days away before that financing application is due. So we have to make that decision here tonight at this meeting. So that's what we're looking for. Mr. Deputy Mayor.
So is this the resolution so we could apply for the loan? Does it come back to council so we could accept the money or just in case the port does find additional funding?
Correct. We're not obligated to spend it. We can, I mean, whatever we don't spend on that, we can give back. So, I mean, anytime before our first payment, we give it back, I think, Ms. Dable.
Robert, a question. If the city were to be approved for the loan and then gave the loan back, would it jeopardize the city's opportunity for future loans from this granting agency?
Robert.
That's not Robert.
Mr. Scott,
That's Scott.
Mr. Scott.
It's Rob Scott.
Oh, my God.
And I assure you, I get called Scott more than my actual first name. It is no problem. I won't touch the microphone. So my understanding is if you apply for this, it's a very competitive program. So I mean, call it a silver lining. You might not even be approved to get the money, even if you apply. But the intent is to apply for the money so that that funding gap can be filled in the future. As you alluded to, you can always give the money back if the port finds more money, or if you look at the financials of it and say, we don't want to pay $50,000 a year in debt service to get $1,000 in revenue. And I can certainly understand that too. The concern was just that you get an application in so that the city has all the options available to it down the line, rather than there are very few ways, unfortunately, to pay for a program like this. And so getting the application in at least puts that on the table. And if your questions are much deeper than that, this is actually Stephanie's thing and she's not here. She said, hey, Rob, come talk to him about airports. So I'm a water guy. But yes, as you alluded to, you're not required to actually take on the funding. It's just the concern is that you get your loan application in to at least put your name in. And then if you decide that the funding just doesn't make sense to you as a city, then that's where you move on. And as to your question as to whether it hinders your ability to get that money in the future, I honestly don't know, but I do think that funding agencies have a fairly short memory for these kinds of things. And so if you were to turn it back under this particular circumstance, I do believe you would probably be able to apply again in the future for a different project if you so fit.
And just a question while you're standing up there, these funds are earmarked specifically for that project. It's not like we have like almost a line of credit to use that fund forever, whatever we want. That is, once we apply for it, it is earmarked for the hangar project, correct?
I believe typically with funding programs in general, you have to apply the scope of work to what you're actually applying for, so.
All right, thank you. Further questions? Ms. Vasquez?
No, not a question, but a comment. So as being now the new liaison for the airport advisory, which are very long meetings, I actually was in one of them and they were actually discussing how they were actually very excited for this project to come through. And they did mention that they had high optimism that they would get filled because a few of them were interested. And they said they had friends who have told them once it was ready that they would come down just because of the high demand and that there hasn't been any around some of their friends. So I did hear some comments about how there's already interest and that they're interested in coming. So that's something I want to share with council.
No, and that's
All of
good.
you.
And as I understand it, there is a severe shortage of hangar space available for pilots.
There's a long waiting list just for like Yakima.
Mm-hmm. So I don't think we have a problem renting the space out, but the dollars that would bring in, it'd be, as Mr. Deputy Mayor mentioned, it's gonna be fairly minimal amount of actual income. But there certainly will be demand for the space. Yes, ma'am.
Just so council understands, this is general fund money. The airport comes out of the general fund, so any shortfall in rent will come from the general fund.
Oof.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Go ahead, sir.
so I have talked to Jay very preliminarily, Jay Hester, about the port taking over the airport, because I can, based on what Debbie just said, it's not a revenue generator for us. And I can tell you, Raul will attest to that, it's a drain on manpower. And typically port districts, I don't know the exact number, they typically operate airports. It's more in their bailiwick of economic development. I mean, I would love for the port to take it over and us be kind of partners on the other side. I can certainly explore that with council's direction, you know, just to throw it out there and continue the conversation kind of more robustly. Because it's just sort of a few in passing conversations I've had with Jay, like, why does the city own this? And when you guys could probably operate it more efficiently and effectively for what the purpose, I mean, ultimately airports are about, especially of this size, are about economic development. Because you see, deputy mayor, as you know, you're trying to wrap your head around, like, why would we get a loan when we're not gonna make any money off of it? And Derek Broughton would like to say a few words, if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor.
Broughton.
Thank you, Mayor. I would concur with that. You do see cities running airports, but it's not very common. When you have a port district in the area. Airports are extremely complicated. You've got your reserve land as opposed to your airport proper. You have, which completely different funding mechanisms, resources available, everything else. Extensions of the runway, safety protocols, like Raul said, you can't apply for funding until you've adopted the plan that lists the safety protocol unless you have an emergency or something like that. Airports often are ran by almost as many people as a city. And if there's a way to see if we can look at some of those, because unless you do significant investment, it's going to be kind of stay where it is. And it may be better to look at other options regarding that facility.
Ms. Mueller.
Well, roughly how many of your man hours do you guys spend a week out at the airport or a month?
Weekly, we do our street department is who really oversees it during the year, and there's weed management control that needs to be done periodically. We sterilize it, but you're still going to get a few weeds out there. And obviously I've learned it myself too through the airport personnel that their view is way different than, and we can look at a side of a road on just roadside and see a few weeds, and yet it's very well maintained. Very different to the airport, because just a few weeds when the propellers are gone, how that can create a problem for them. So it's a lot different. In the winter, we have to plow it. We have to make sure that it's safe for them. There's also there's an AWAS out there, which it's a radio system that lets the pilots know that we have to make sure same thing in the areas that it's being maintained. There's a lounge that we also janitorials have to keep an eye on, keep it clean. Obviously we have it's also ag around it. So we're going to have tractors that drive on it where we have to get the sweeper out there. And that's what those daily checks are, is to kind of make sure that a tractor didn't go out there and drive on it. Some of the pilots are pretty good, because when they go out to the hangars, if they see something, they'll let us know. But again, we have to go make sure we clean it up. And so, you know, we would have to take depending on the winter, how often we're gonna have to go out there and plow it. And depending on in the past, what kind of product was used for sterilant too, whether we have to go more frequent out there. And then again, because we don't have a perimeter fence, there's also the ongoing, sometimes investigation of cars that go out there in the middle of the night. Some of the airport advisory board members have told us, because one of them lives there, is they see cars that come in there in the middle of the night, and it makes it tough right now because we don't have a fence to close it off.
You still have the one camera out there operating?
There is a camera right now that IT's working on. There's a few things going on with it, but yes, there is that.
And then all of that work relates to $130,000 a year.
So we've had council members in the past who have been very adamant about the fact that the city owns that and the city needs to continue to own it, and other council members have been less enthusiastic about it. So this is a decision that council can make. It bears discussion. The question before us at this time is, do we wish to approve and authorize the city manager to submit a funding application to the CARB funding program, and that is due on the 15th. I would think that we would want to have further discussion about how the city wants to manage the airport, or if we wish to see the city manager enter in discussions with the port to look at other options. I think that's something that can come up at a later meeting. For tonight, once again, this is funding that even if we're approved for, we don't necessarily have to use it. We can give it back if we choose to do that. But I think tonight is before us. Do we decide on whether we authorize the manager to submit the application for that funding? So I guess that's what's before us this evening. All the other discussion, I believe, is a good topic for discussion at a later meeting. Perhaps at a study session where we can dig into that a little bit more deeply. All very good questions that were brought up tonight. But yeah, we do need to stick to the question that's before us this evening, Ms. Vasquez.
So I have a question. By chance, is there a way that maybe Mike Gonzalez, you can get in touch with HLA? What's her name? Stephanie?
Yes,
Just to
Stephanie, right.
ask if we do go ahead and apply for this grant, if it would jeopardize our chances to reapply in the future, in case we end up applying and then not going for it, would it put us in jeopardy? Is there a way we could maybe get a response from her ASAP before we approve going
Try to
forward?
give her a call, let me see if she'll answer.
Is she, Rob, is she on vacation this week or?
Okay.
Back tomorrow.
Okay,
She wasn't in the office today and she knew that ahead of time, so it's not like a service.
okay.
And I just asked because it's pretty, like, I would really want to know before we jeopardize our chances for the future.
Ms. Rosto.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, that is a really good question. Just a couple a comment, I guess, is just, I feel like we just are not in a good financial standing to even entertain the idea of another loan right now. And maybe this is a question for Ms. Zabel. If we were to, well, depending on what the actual response from Stephanie is when would we be in a better economic financial standing to consider something like this? I mean, are we talking like 2 years, 3 years? Yeah. Oh, okay.
Well, and then the city manager and I had a conversation with the port director about the project that's going on now. And that's the methane gas production.
Right.
Pacific Egg, I think is that what that is. And so that's, I think, slated to be done in 2026.
I don't know the
Right.
exact date, but I can find
I
out.
mean, from that, it's very exciting. I mean, it's, because that construction does have one-time sales tax and it has permitting that we'll get, but there's also the opportunity to collect utility tax production of that gas, which is going to be another revenue stream. So is it going to be, $1 million? I don't know what that dollar amount looks like. Is it enough to support the airport so it's not a drain on our general fund? Possibly.
Okay, okay. I just don't see why it would jeopardize our chances. Do you see this happening quite often? Like if we don't actually go through with the loan, I mean, if there's any repercussions, we're not even in the middle of the application. So how would it jeopardize our chances for another time around if we actually, or a different council wanted to consider it? It's a question I don't,
And there are some funding agencies that if you gave a loan back, they wouldn't look kindly on that.
So would it be best to not even apply for it, then apply for it, get it, and then give it back?
I've never dealt with this
Okay.
loan agency, so I'm not sure.
And it's very competitive, so there's a good chance that we won't even be receiving it. But these are all good questions. So with all of that discussion behind us, what is the desire of council on this item?
Move to approve.
Yes. Do we have a second? All right, so no second means that the motion fails. So therefore, motion fails. All right, thank you. Item F, Resolution to adopt WUE goals and measures. Consider approving a resolution authorizing the city manager to adopt the WUE goals and measures. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The city held a public hearing on September 9th to discuss the water system plan and review the city's water use efficiency. WUE is the acronym, goals and measures as part of the public hearing process. After reviewing documentation supporting the city's outreach efforts during the process of approving the water system plan update, DOH has identified that the city did not meet the requirements of the WAC code 246290830. Section 3, subsection B, by not explicitly identifying that the WUE goals and measures would be reviewed at the public hearing. Therefore, a repeat hearing will need to be conducted. DOH has also stated that the WUE goals and measures shall be established by resolution. Of particular note, the city may change its goals at any time per the WAC code with 246290830. So that's how I'll tee it up, Mayor, and Raul can lend more context.
Oh,
Thank you. I will turn it back over to Robert Scott because it is a little confusing. So he can explain the situation here.
Mr. Scott.
Thank you. So as I alluded to earlier, when this public hearing had to be repeated just because Department of Health did not like the way we basically notified the public regarding the first one by not explicitly stating we were going to be discussing those goals. So that was one of their comments back to us. We've repeated the hearing tonight, and the intent is now to submit documentation that this hearing did take place and that the council did approve the water use efficiency program so that we can get that documentation to Department of Health for approval of the water system plan.
Questions or comments, council? So this is essentially a repetition of what we did on September 6th, as well as the public hearing was a repetition of what we had done that time as well. So there's no questions or comments. What is the desire of council on this item?
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Is that Ms. Vasquez?
Mhm.
All right, we got a motion by Councilor Bueller, second by Councilor Vasquez to approve a resolution authorizing the city manager to adopt the WUE goals and measures. Debate on this item. Hearing none. Mr. Bueller,
Yes.
Ms. Vasquez.
Yes.
Councilor Ripley,
Yes.
Councilor Fausto.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Galvan.
Yes.
And I also vote yes. Motion passes. Item G, jail rate resolution. Consider approving a resolution authorizing the city manager to negotiate, execute, and administer interlocal jail agreements and amendments. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is something Chief Lehman has been working on with Debbie Zabel. It's a new resolution updating the minimum dollar amount that can be set for the contracts aside from the U.S. Marshals and the state DOC. Mayor?
All right, council members, any questions or comments on this item? Mr. Deputy Mayor.
So before, I believe right now we want to put it at what, 68.99 per inmate, and before it was at 63?
I believe so, yeah, 63 and some change.
Have we looked at the jails around us, how much they charge per day?
We have, a lot of it doesn't just depend on the jail, it also depends on the services. So like the Yakima County Jail has medical staff on 24 hours a day. So their rate is significantly higher. It's around 100, and it's on my desk because it's going up the first of the year, I think 126. But we would be similar to the Kittitas County Jail. And they're at, I think 76 a day. But when we calculate this, talking with Ms. Zabel, we have to take actual costs, and we calculated off the 2023 actual costs of operating the jail and added 9.5%, which would be for some administrative costs that the finance department and other departments within the city handle, as well as the cost of living adjustment in the contract for the employees of that department.
So we are actually doing a jail analysis for our rates to make sure that we are recouping as much of our expenditures as we can, because it's a $1.8 million expense with only recouping half of the revenues. So if we could recover more of our bed costs, that would be optimum, but doing a jail study on what that actually would be is something that we are looking at doing.
So we're operating off an old resolution now, but this is setting the minimum that the city manager can negotiate the contracts at. So basically, all contracts would be at 68.99. Now, once we do this jail study and next year comes around, we'll be able to increase it anything above that, but we can't go below that without council approval is what this resolution is doing. So off our last contract, I think it was like at 50 something was the last resolution that came before city council. But we've raised it every year. What we do is just like the county jail just did to us, is about October or November of every year, we send out to our contract agencies what the next year's rate is going to be. And so that they can do it at their budget time so that they can set their budget on what it's going to cost them to house their inmates. So when we get this jail study done, what we'll do is next October, as long as it's not less, we'll just send a letter out to the contract agency saying the new rate next year is going to be this because we did a new study. Now, if it's going to be under 68.99, we have to bring it back to you because that would violate the resolution.
And this is something, council, that we do as council fairly regularly. We've done it several times during my time on council where we evaluate what we are charging per bed. We have agreements with other cities around the state to house prisoners who they don't have maybe enough jail space. And so we do have agreements with different cities, and that would apply to that as well, correct? These rates?
So this would apply to all of our contract cities with the exception of the US Marshals and the Washington State Department of Corrections. And the reason for those two exemptions are the United States Marshals tell you what they're going to pay and you either accept it or you don't. However, with their rate, which is lower, or I'm sorry, their rate is significantly higher than 68.99, but they also pay a transport fee. Now, the Washington State Department of Corrections by statute can only go up, I believe it's 5% per year. They are less than 68.99. They're in the $50 range. However, they pay a transport fee as well. So what we do is if we get an inmate of theirs in at 50 some dollars a day and we can rent that same bed out for $69, what we do is we keep them for one night, drive them up to Yakima, and we get that 50 some dollars and we get like this, I think it's a $45 transport fee. As long as we keep them for one night, we actually are getting over $100 for that inmate. If we keep them for multiple nights, we're not. It dilutes that transport fee.
Yes, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
So are we recycling also the wording on the contract? Has it ever been reviewed and you know, possibly changed? I mean, one thing I like more of the numbers is looking at contracts. So there's just a few
That we're having our consultant do is to look at, do a model jail contract that other jails throughout the state are using.
Okay, so as far as the contract, that's the next item on the agenda, and it was just reviewed by Mr. Riley. And he had a couple of just small updates as far as language corrections that he wanted to see, but that's the actual, this is the actual contracts, the next item on the agenda that goes to the other municipalities that we contract with. It talks about how they're gonna pay for medical costs that they get passed on to the contract agency. It talks about the rates can increase annually, things like that. It's all part of this.
Okay, so this first one is for the rates only, and then
Correct.
we're gonna talk about the contract?
Yes.
Okay, I'll wait for that.
Right. Further questions? Hearing none, what is the desire of council, excuse me, on this item?
Move to approve.
Second,
All right, got a motion by Councilor Bueller, second by Councilor Ripley to approve a resolution authorizing the city manager to negotiate, execute, and administrate interlocal jail agreements and amendments. Debate on this item. Hearing none. Mr. Bueller.
Yes.
Ms. Vasquez.
Yes.
Councilor Ripley.
yes.
Councilor Fausto. Deputy Mayor.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Motion passes. I should put it on the right line, sorry. Okay, now item H, jail contract. Consider approving an updated jail interlocal agreement. Mr. City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, we will continue with Chief Rob Lehman.
Chief Lehman.
So before you, in your packet is a copy of a contract that we send out to our other contract agencies. It's a pretty standard contract that not much changes from what we've used before. I think there was just some small language changes that Mr. Riley would like to have seen as far as responsibility in some areas. And that was the only real cleanup. But I stand for any questions.
Questions or comments for Chief?
Yeah.
Mr. Deputy Mayor.
So right now, when an inmate gets released, right? What's the process? They get released into Sunnyside or they come and pick them up?
So they're usually notified a couple of days prior to their release that they're going to be released, and they arrange for their transportation.
So the inmate does go back safe to Seattle or wherever the jurisdiction.
Typically, yes.
Typically.
I don't really know of any situations where they've stayed. I know one gentleman from Othello had a hard time finding a ride and slept in our lobby for a night until his family could come get him. But typically, yes, they return to where they're from. Usually they have family waiting for them in the parking lot when they get released.
So is there a way to put it on the contract that they have to, that the jurisdiction has to pick them up? The reason I ask because, you know, why do we want criminals leaving the jail and going into Sunnyside, right? I mean, trying to clean it up. I would prefer if if they could pick them up. If there's a way to put it on the contract that, you bring them here to Sunnyside, you pick them up.
As part of the contract, typically we go get the inmates from the other jurisdictions. So, boy, I don't know the legalities of that. Forcing them to go back. But I think once they're released, they're released. I don't think we can force them to go back to where they originated their sentence.
They can, I guess for the attorney, can we put it on the word that jurisdiction has to pick them up?
To a right to live and occupy where you want to be as a person. And are we talking about two different things too? Also, are we talking about people that committed crime in Sunnyside, don't come to court and get bench warrants? And
No.
transport them and bring them, or we're talking about people that were housing?
We're talking about somebody that gets arrested and booked into jail in Linwood for a DUI. They get sentenced to 6 months and they come serve their 6 months here at the end of that 6 months. Is it?
If you require, we follow the statute language. And it's RCW 3934, when our goal is always in writing a contract to limit the liability of the city. And I also don't think it's an issue that has arose, like Chief said. We're not seeing people that were housing for other jurisdictions for those offenses sticking around and committing crimes.
Okay.
Further questions or comments on this item? Hearing none, what is the desire of council on this item?
Move to approve the contract.
I'll second it.
All right, we got a motion by Councilor Beeler, second by Councilor Ripley to approve the updated jail interlocal agreement. Is there debate on this item? All right, Mr. Beeler,
Yes.
Councilor Vasquez,
Yes.
Councilor Ripley,
Yes.
Councilor Fausto, Councilor Deputy Mayor,
No.
and I vote yes as well. 5-1, motion passes. Item 8, items from council members, mayor's appointments for boards and commissions. I don't have anything that we've met to review at this point. The Rules Committee has not met, so we will hopefully be able to bring something before council shortly. If anybody does wish to apply for an open seat on a board and commission, please make sure that you get that application in. And I did receive notice that we do now have a vacancy on the Arts Commission, and I forgot to bring that into you, sir. But I did get a letter of resignation from our Arts Commission, so we do have an open seat. All right, item B, other reports, announcements, and or questions by council, and we'll just go on down the line. Mr. Beeler?
Well, I enjoyed myself at the Jerry Taylor Veterans Plaza. Had a really nice ceremony out there, and I seen a few of you guys out there. It was a really good turnout. The marbles are looking great out there. And we had a really, I think, pretty good turnout. A little cold, but we had a good turnout.
All right,
That's all I
thank you,
have.
sir. Councilor Vasquez.
No, just maybe a special thank you to all the veterans that are here in Sunnyside. Thank you for your service because it goes a long way and it's never forgotten. And a lot of times people tend to overlook their sacrifice, their commitment, and the time that they did dedicate to our country, to our freedom. And I just want to say thank you because I heard a lot that they don't get that recognition a lot as they should. So thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Ripley.
I went to the Veterans Memorial yesterday and it was very nice. And one thing I was wondering is, did we receive money from the opioid settlement or whatever that was? And we were supposed to have a committee for,
We did receive money from that. It hasn't been dispersed yet that I know of. Mr. City Manager, have you looked into that at all?
One thing we have received the funds and Counselor Ripley, I don't know the exact amount. That's one of the, I've been working with the chief to sort of identify and with Debbie to figure out where those funds went. We certainly have received them. So we're gonna have to do some backtracking and figure out where exactly they are and how much exactly that is. So.
yeah, I just wanted to,
It's definitely on our radar, and I know I've been in touch with Monica Niemeyer, who's done quite a bit of research on it, and she sent me quite a few files recently, so I appreciated her homework on it. So she gave me quite a bit of information that I'm using to actually track it. So I do appreciate the work she did on that side of things. Now I just have to verify that what she gave me was in fact correct. So I'll be working with Debbie. I'll give you a report our hopefully before our next meeting, but as soon as I can.
okay.
And that question did come up during a coffee with the mayor as well. So I'm glad you brought that up. Do you have anything else to add?
No, that was it.
Counselor Fausto.
Yeah, I mean, I concur with my colleagues here. I was at the Veterans Day, at the Veterans Memorial. And then I don't know who I told. Oh, I think it was you, Mr. Mayor, that I had my dog with me, and then as soon as I started shooting, she got so scared, so I had to take her with me. But it was a really good turnout, and it was just really good to see just a community come together in that sense. And I concur with Councilor Vasquez about how, you know, veterans often go overlooked and forgotten, and you know, many of them are dealing with mental health issues. Many of them are dealing with substance abuse. I think we have someone here with even with housing, right? Many of them are unsheltered, and I think there's an unsheltered person who here in Sunnyside who is actually a veteran. And I don't know their name or her name. I forgot it. Someone mentioned it to me, but yeah, I mean, hats off to our veterans, and I hope that along the way we are able to definitely do more for them because they did so much for us. And another thing, I did send you all an email about the U.S. Soccer Foundation traveling all the way from the East Coast, and they're going to be in our home here in Sunnyside on Saturday. And the city is partnering with this. It's going to be held at the Sunnyside Community Center. It really is a coach mentorship training. It's an actual certificate that the U.S. Soccer Foundation is going to be giving out. There's going to be 2 sessions from 12 to 2 and in English, and 1 from 3 to 5 in Spanish. And it is open to all coaches of all sports, not just necessarily soccer. So if you know of any coach that really would want to come out and get this very holistic training on learning how to be a better, not just coach, but mentor to those who, to the youth, then have them come out, and it's completely free. And it's happening this Saturday, and yeah, and our guests are gonna be coming in from New York, so it'd be really cool to have council members come in and say hello and give them a nice welcome to Sunnyside, and really just a big thank you for being able to do this for coaches and mentors in our community, because if one thing we can agree on is we definitely need more youth adult mentorship, healthy youth adult mentorship going on here in our community. And then I had someone reach out, Counselor Ripley, about wanting to do a mural in the community. And now that we're Mr. Mayor just reminded me of that, and I'll connect with you. So maybe we can do a mutual connection. I know you sit on you're the liaison for the Arts Committee, and we could definitely use some more murals out in community. I know we just had a really cool one display over on 6th Street. So I'll be in touch with that. And yeah, that's it for me.
Thank you, Counselor. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, so I attended the community center, the father-daughter dance, great turnout. They dressed me up as the beast, so I was one of two beasts that was there. Another thing, Chief Lehman, thank you again for taking Counselor Foster and I, what was it, Saturday night? Sunday? I don't even remember what day I live in.
Sunday?
Sunday night,
Saturday.
we witnessed, the some of the members of the force training out there in the dark, shooting exercises. Even the chief got into it, so it was good to see them, receiving that training. I know, there's a law that they have to receive training. So that was a great experience. Another thing is also the Veterans Day. It was a privilege for me to say some words there. Another thing that me and my wife noticed or we're talking about is, how you could get somebody's name up there, right? She has a couple uncles, that served in the military that have passed. I think another one that's still alive. So she just wasn't sure how and what the process was to get somebody's name out there. So there is an application you must submit. So just in case anybody out there wants to put their family or even a friend's name up, up on the wall, get a hold of them and, pretty sure they'll give you an application. Another thing is the LTAC, we met and we do have some recommendations that we will be bringing to council. There was a couple of signature events that did not apply. One of them was Sunshine Days. The other one was the implement parade. So as a committee, we decided to reopen the application process until November 25th. And LTAC will meet again November 27th to go over those applications and then vote on, recommendations to bring to council sometime in December. So hopefully in December, we'll have some recommendations for council.
The 27th isn't Thanksgiving, is it?
The November 27th is a Wednesday.
Okay.
Yeah. But
Might have some scheduling conflicts for that one. But
that's all I got.
all right, thank you, sir. So as my colleagues have noted, that it's been a very busy couple of weeks with a lot of events going on. I also was able to attend the Veterans Day activities yesterday. And again, I do want to echo what they said. It was very well put together. It was nice to see some new faces. They've done some recruiting at the VFW. And so we've had some new people out there involved in that. Privileged to see so many members of the community. They always do an excellent job with that ceremony, and it was very enjoyable. Deputy Mayor did an excellent job with his presentation and his speech. So congratulations on that, sir. I did have the opportunity as a result of that. I was interviewed for KIMA on our Veterans Plaza and was able to say a few words about that and understand that I didn't see it, but understand that I actually appeared on the news. So that was kind of exciting. And then also I had a very rare and fun privilege. I had the opportunity to teach a civics class at Sunnyside Christian School to third graders. Now, you kind of wonder just how much civics the third graders grasp. They had a surprising amount of knowledge and understanding, and it was also absolutely fun, the stuff that they didn't understand and the questions. I did have to inform them that no, I don't own the city of Sunnyside as the mayor. So the people who live in Sunnyside own the city of Sunnyside. And so had a great time with that. I was able to teach 2 different classes. And what I want to do, I got a thank you card from each of the classes, and I want to get that as soon as our clerk is back, get that posted on our city Facebook page, because that was just absolutely cool. Really enjoyed that. I've had conversations with other individuals about different things with the city, and I'm seeing some positive movement, some positive attitudes towards our city. The changes that we made in the last 3 or 4 months are beginning to resonate with the population. So I want to commend our staff. I want to commend our city manager. And also I want to commend my fellow council members for being out and about in the community and reaching out to the citizenry, because it is not unnoticed. So thank you for that. And essentially it's us doing our job, isn't it? So, and then finally, I do want to commend, since we had the elections a week ago, I want to commend the candidates for removing their signs. It was a long and exhausting election season, and I think everybody's thankful that it's behind us. And the candidates have been absolutely phenomenal about cleaning up some of the street corners where we had a lot of signs. They're gone, and it was just a very short period of time. And so I just want to publicly commend them for doing that. And that's all I have. Upcoming council meetings. Mr. City Manager.
So our next meetings are scheduled for Monday, November 18th and Monday, November 25th. And Debbie, there wasn't anything in between there that was a special meeting. I just wanted to make sure. Okay, okay, just making sure. But so for the public, the next couple of Mondays, we'll have meetings, and December 2nd is when I believe we will finalize. Is it the 2nd or the 9th? So we're gonna wait till the 9th. Okay. So again, the December 9th will be the final budget hearing. So yes, there you go, Mayor.
Mr. City Manager,
Yes.
do you know when we will resume back in January, around tentatively what date?
Let me take a peek at the calendar real quick. Because depending on the jurisdiction, some will work. I've worked at cities that work right through December and just,
We follow the
So-
plan, it would be January 6th.
January, yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
So we have a meeting on January 6th?
Well, that is if we continue with our regular plan. What will happen in December, once we get our budget passed, that is our big key right there. We'll make sure that we've got our regular December meeting so that we've got all of those bills paid and that we're up to date there. And then quite often what we do is we will recess for the rest of December, so we won't have our second December meeting or study session typically. Now, that's up to council to change that. And then with the break for the holidays, Christmas and New Year's, that means we would miss the December 30 meeting and then we would go directly to January 6th. It's up to council if council wishes to move that to January 13. But that's a long time to go with a lot of business. Mr. Beeler, question?
December 30th is the 5th week. We don't have,
Oh, we wouldn't have a meeting on the 30th. You're right. I was looking at the January calendar, so I didn't see that.
we'll be off for the
Yeah.
New Year's.
So yeah, our last meeting, if we follow through with our meetings, would be December 23. And I think typically we recess for that period of time and allow staff to have some time off as well. Okay, so are you trying to arrange vacation plans and? Trust me, we all do that. So,
Make sure I'm around.
okay, we all think about that. So,
It's been a long year.
so we will talk about that at our December meeting. If we pass the budget, then we can talk about recessing for a period of time and canceling upcoming meetings if that is council's desire. So that's when that will come up.
Sounds fair.
All right. All right, next, and please remember, if you have agenda items that need to get on the agenda, to get them to the manager or the clerk on the Monday before the meeting. So a full week before the meeting to make sure that all that stuff can get entered in. Mr. City Manager reports.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councilor Fausto, for bringing that up. I haven't even thought about next year. Just trying to get through this year. But one thing I'll mention, Councilor Fausto and I went to Catalina's, which was a great experience, and what a beautiful cafe. And Catalina has been in that space for 25, 30 years. And if you haven't been in there, it's a hair salon with coffee, great food. And thank you.
Cocktails.
Yeah, cocktails, so just a great combination. And so I so appreciate what they're bringing to the table from an economic development standpoint. And that avocado sandwich, I owe Councilor Fausto lunch next time, but it was amazing. So it was really good. And so I appreciate what they're bringing to the table. So that was great. Just a couple of announcements, Mayor. The climate element of our comprehensive plan, we still need some volunteers for that. So anybody in the public that would like to be a part of that committee, please contact Derek, and you can contact myself as well. I have committed to be a volunteer on that. I think right now we're at 3 members officially. I know you're willing to jump in and that's legal, but we'd prefer somebody from the public. So, and this is a new part of the comprehensive plan that incorporates a climate element. Like Deputy Mayor mentioned, the LTAC fund, they've been working really hard on that. So I appreciate all the committee's work. I echo the sentiments of council. Just a wonderful Veterans Day ceremony. Kudos to Greg Schlieve, who I've had an opportunity to meet with for the first time. We talked about that, the implements, and that's something you'll be hearing a little bit more about. Council is sort of the direction with the implements. trying to take the kinder, gentler approach with those and, see how we can really work that out. So it's mutually beneficial. And I really did enjoy my time with Greg, and, he's got such a love for this community. You can't help but like the guy, on your first meeting. So it's pretty infectious, and he did just an amazing job out there yesterday. I did receive this message from Milne Fruit, so some good news here, and I promised I would get this out to the public. So they're reopening after being closed for a while. So I received a message from David Luther. And so he says that you're going to start seeing advertisements for a variety of positions starting this week: supervisors, leads, production workers. He thinks around 30 new employees will be brought on. So that's some good economic news there. Another thing I wanted to get out to the community was we have taken Lisa out of the community center, and she's helping support our efforts within City Hall with our utility billing and doing some upfront work. So there's 2 people now at the community center. So what we're doing is making sure there's always 2 people out there for safety concerns, but this shouldn't really affect the hours, other than you won't see Lisa out there, who is typically up front. Just for budgetary issues, to save money, everybody's kind of stepping up and making sacrifices just like everybody on our staff. I don't have an admin assistant right now, so I'm wearing multiple hats trying to, and I have respect for admin assistants. When you don't have one, it's not easy to keep a calendar. So if I don't get back to you guys right away, I'm trying my best. And then just kudos to Debbie and the staff, for tightening our belts. And you can see with some of the measures that I put in place, the group has been really disciplined. No one's complained. They're just nuts and bolts, and we're trying to save money and do the right thing. And I think ultimately, I think we're headed in the right direction. I do apologize for not having that agenda item. That was my fault. And I just want to we're not hiding anything. I'm trying to be completely transparent that we got a lot of moving parts going on. So I thought we were going to encompass that all into one thing, but I think it gives the council an opportunity to read it too, because we kind of got it done at the 11th hour, because there was just a lot of work that had to be done. But fortunately, Debbie does it with ease, so she's really good at it. Other than that, council, just we continue to work hard as a staff, and I really appreciate it. That's all I got.
Mr. City Manager, so are we keeping Miss Riley, or? Coming back.
Ben did say that she's much smarter than he is, so he's making sure that she stays quiet so we don't realize that. I was supposed to keep that to myself, but I just couldn't help it since you asked. So yeah, we're appreciative she's here.
An amendment to the contract.
All right, thank you, sir. And I know that this is the end of the agenda. I do want to just add one thing. I just want to express my respect and admiration for staff and Ms. Sable and our city manager for the hard work that they're doing on our budget, seeing as they presented this evening that we're actually going to have a positive balance in our general fund is really exciting, considering the news that we heard in August. So excellent. Okay, I am sleeping much better hearing that sort of thing. So well done. I know my sleeping is probably not your biggest goal, but for me, that's awesome. So well done. Thank you so much. All right, there being no further business to come before council, and without objection, we are adjourned at 8:07 p.m. Thank you, everybody. Have a great